She was just the woman who emptied trash bins and mopped the floor. Until one morning she opened her mouth, and the CEO stopped in his tracks, stunned by what he heard. It was a typical Monday morning at Belridge Global in downtown Fort Worth, Texas. The marble-floored lobby bustled with busy employees sipping coffee, tapping phones, and rushing to their departments. Thomas Granger, the CEO, was making his usual walk from the parking garage to the executive suite on the 18th floor when he suddenly heard something that made him pause, a voice sharp and fluent, speaking perfect Mandarin. That alone wouldn't have shocked him. Belridge did business all over the world, but what caught him off guard was who was speaking. Standing near the touchscreen lobby directory was a woman in a burgundy janitorial uniform, mop handle, resting nearby. She wasn't a visitor, not a manager, she was the night shift custodian. Yet here she was, calmly giving directions in flawless Mandarin to a confused older man in a navy jacket. A moment later she turned and addressed a delivery driver in Spanish. Then, as if flipping a switch, she pointed toward a set of boxes and spoke fluent French to a vendor. Thomas narrowed his eyes. He had passed her countless times in the hallways after late meetings, always polite, but quiet. He didn't even know her name. But now, watching her handle 3 different languages in under a minute, something shifted in him. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe for the first time in a long time, he realized just how much he hadn't been seeing. Thomas Granger stood there momentarily frozen, watching the woman return to her cart and pick up her mop like nothing had happened. He stepped forward, the leather soles of his shoes clicking softly against the tile. "Excuse me," he called out. The woman turned startled but composed. "Yes, sir. You were speaking Mandarin just now, correct?" "Yes, sir. And before that Spanish, then French." She nodded politely. "That's right." He tilted his head, curiosity piqued. "How many languages do you speak?" 9, she replied, her voice steady and matter-of-fact. Mandarin, Spanish, French, Portuguese, German, Arabic, Italian, Swahili. And I read Latin, though I don't really count that. Thomas blinked, trying to wrap his mind around it. 9 languages. That's incredible. There was no pride in her voice, no boasting, just the simple delivery of a fact. "What's your name?" he asked. "Marion Walker." "Well, Miss Walker, are you free for a few minutes?" Her eyebrows rose ever so slightly. "Right now?" "Yes, I'd like to speak with you in my office." She hesitated just for a second, not from fear, but from the quiet reflex of someone unaccustomed to being noticed. She gave a small nod. All right. They rode the elevator together in silence. As the numbers climbed, Marion suddenly spoke. "I've worked here 13 years, Mr. Granger." He turned toward her, surprised. "Never thought I'd be invited to the executive floor." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes things change faster than we expect." As the doors opened on the top floor, Marion stepped into a space shed only seen during after-hours cleaning shifts. Everything smelled of citrus leather and wealth. The receptionist glanced up, clearly confused by the janitor standing beside the CEO, but Thomas simply nodded and led Marion into his glass-walled office. "Please have a seat." She sat carefully, folding her hands in her lap. Her eyes wandered across the room at the espresso machine, the world map behind his desk, the framed photo of his daughters. She wasn't impressed. She was observant. Thomas leaned forward. "Marion, I'll be honest, I didn't expect to have this conversation today. But hearing you speak like that, I had to know more. How does someone like you, someone with your skills, end up mopping floors?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked out the window, collecting her thoughts. "Do you want the truth?" she asked quietly. "I wouldn't have asked otherwise." She rubbed her palms together slowly, as if warming them. "I was born in Toledo, Ohio. My dad worked at a machine shop. My mom was a nurse's aide. They didn't have much, but they believed in education. I got a full scholarship to Kent State, studied linguistics. I was halfway through my master's when my mom got sick." Her voice faltered for a moment, but she pressed on. "I came home to take care of her. Then my dad had a stroke. He passed 6 months later. Everything just collapsed. I had a baby girl, no real support. So I worked wherever I could, grocery stores, senior homes, cleaning gigs. One day someone here offered me a night job. The hours worked. It helped pay the bills. That was over a decade ago. Thomas listened silently, absorbing each word. No blinking. No interruptions. But I never stopped learning. Marian continued. I borrowed textbooks, listened to audio courses, read international newspapers. It's the only thing I've kept doing for myself, even when the world didn't see me. There was no bitterness in her voice, just reality clean and unadorned. Most people, she added softly, see the uniform and assume. That word lingered in the room like a shadow. Thomas leaned back in his chair, the weight of her story settling in his chest. She hadn't come to ask for pity. She hadn't asked for anything. She had simply answered his question with truth clear, unflinching, and quietly astonishing. You ever think about doing something else? He asked. She gave a small shrug. Sometimes. But it's hard to dream when the rent's due. He didn't speak. Neither did she. But in that quiet moment, something unspoken passed between them, recognition. Not of rank, but of worth. He picked up his notebook and began to write. What are you writing? She asked, her tone still calm, but curious now. He looked up the corner of his mouth, lifting slightly. An idea, he said, a big one. Thomas Granger couldn't shake their conversation. Even as he sat through budget meetings and vendor calls that afternoon, his thoughts kept drifting back to Marian Walker. Her quiet dignity. Her story. The way she rattled off 9 languages as casually as someone listing groceries. That level of fluency didn't come from talent alone, it came from discipline, hunger, and a lifetime of choosing to stay sharp even when life tried to wear her down. By 3:45 p.m., he had made up his mind. Thomas stepped into the elevator this time, descending not to the parking lot or executive lounge, but to the service level of the building. The walls were off-white, a little scuffed, the air warmer and heavy with the scent of industrial cleaner. Past maintenance rooms and water bottle pallets, he found her. Marian was restocking cloths onto a metal shelf in the janitorial supply room when he appeared in the doorway. Mind if I interrupt again? He asked. She turned visibly surprised. You came down here? He gave a light shrug. Couldn't stop thinking about our talk. I've got a favor to ask. Marian wiped her hands on her shirt. What kind of favor? There's a group from our São Paulo office upstairs. They arrived early and our translator canceled last minute. Can you help? There was a flicker of hesitation, but only for a moment. Portuguese, she asked. Yes, I can do that. Minutes later, they walked into conference room 4C. 4 Brazilian executives sat around a table checking their phones, their expressions tight with mild confusion. Marian stepped in with quiet confidence, nodded respectfully, and then began to speak. Instantly, the room transformed, tension lifted. The executives sat up straighter. One of them cracked a joke in Portuguese, and Marian responded with an even sharper one. They all laughed. Thomas couldn't understand a word, but he didn't need to. He saw the connection she created, the way she made people feel, seen, heard, and respected. She wasn't just translating. She was building bridges. After the meeting ended, one of the Brazilian execs leaned over and asked Thomas in English, "Where did you find her?" Thomas glanced at Marian, who was already gathering the coffee cups with her usual quiet efficiency. "Right here," he replied. In the hallway afterward, he caught up with her. "You ever done professional translation before?" She shook her head. "Just helped folks out in hospitals' offices wherever I was needed. No certification. No time. My daughter needed me more than a classroom did." He nodded, then asked, "And where is she now?" "She's 26. A nurse in Tempe. Paid for school herself. Stubborn like her mama." They both smiled. And for a moment, the titles of CEO and janitor didn't exist. Just 2 people talking about life. As they made their way back to the service level, Marian said something that stayed with him. "I didn't do anything special today." Thomas paused, brow raised. "That's not how it looked to me." She smiled faintly, then returned to her cart. 2 more floors to clean before the shift ended. That night, as he sat in his car staring at the quiet skyline, Thomas Granger thought long and hard about how easily brilliance could be overlooked. How many resumes he had discarded for lacking a degree. How many people like Marion he'd probably passed by without even a glance. The company spent millions on international recruitment diversity seminars and strategic innovation, yet someone like her, someone extraordinary, had been mopping the same floor for 13 years without a single question asked. And now that he had really seen it, he couldn't unsee it. Tomorrow, he told himself, that was going to change, starting with her. The next morning, just after 7:00 a.m., Marion Walker had barely finished wiping down the east lobby when her supervisor, Ron, approached her with a puzzled look. "Hey, Marion, Mr. Granger wants to see you again." Her brow furrowed. "Did I do something wrong?" Ron shook his head. "Didn't say. Just told me to send you up." Wiping her hands on a towel, Marion made her way to the elevator, the same path she'd taken the day before. But everything felt different now. People in the building, folks who usually never glanced her way, suddenly noticed her. One receptionist even gave her a small, knowing smile. Marion didn't know what it meant, but something had shifted. When she stepped into the executive suite, Thomas Granger was already standing near the window, sipping his coffee and staring out at the Fort Worth skyline. "Come in," he said without turning. She stood quietly until he faced her. There was a new energy about him, not just thoughtful, but certain. "I've been thinking," he said, setting down his mug, "about missed opportunities, about how many people never get a chance, not because they're not capable, but because no one ever bothers to look twice." Marion said nothing. She had learned long ago not to trust words too quickly. "I want to create a new position," he continued. "Something this company's needed for a long time, even if we didn't know it." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What kind of position?" "Cultural liaison for international affairs," he said, his tone confident. "Someone who can bridge communication between our global partners, vendors, and visiting clients. Someone who understands language culture nuance and can spot things our entire leadership team has been missing." Marion's lips parted, but no sound came out. "You're qualified, Marion. More than most people upstairs. And you've already proven you can do it with grace, patience, and brains." She searched his face for any trace of pity, but all she saw was resolve. "This real?" she asked cautiously. "As real as it gets?" "I don't have a degree," she said plainly. "You have something better: lived experience, commitment, fluency. Do you really think I'm going to let a piece of paper stand in the way?" Marion shifted her weight. "Why me?" Thomas looked her in the eyes. "Because yesterday I watched you solve 3 problems in 3 languages before 9:00 a.m. And because I'm tired of people like you doing twice the work for half the credit." She crossed her arms. "You know what people are going to say." "I don't care." Another long pause passed between them. Then, almost reluctantly, she asked, "What about my shift downstairs?" Thomas smiled. "Well, find someone. But no one can replace you." She looked down, then back up again. "You sure this isn't just charity?" He shook his head. "No, this is overdue recognition." Her throat tightened, but she blinked the tears away before they could fall. "All right, then," she said softly, then straighter, firmer. "Let's see what I can do." Thomas extended his hand. Marion shook it, her grip steady. It wasn't just a handshake, it was a rewriting of her story, one neither of them would forget. But what neither realized then was just how much that handshake would ripple. Because within 48 hours, the entire building was buzzing, not with official memos, but with whispers that the janitor had been promoted to an executive position. Some people were inspired. Others weren't so gracious. And Marion was about to walk straight into a world where not everyone welcomed change. By Wednesday morning, Marion Walker's nameplate was mounted outside her new office on the 12th floor. The black letters on brushed steel read, "Marion Walker, Cultural Liaison, International Affairs." It was clean, elegant, and for many in the building completely unexpected. The gossip had already spread faster than any memo could. Whispers filled the elevator, bounced between cubicles, and trickled down through Slack channels. The janitor got an executive office. "She speaks like 10 languages, I heard. Granger gave her the job himself, just handed it to her." In the staff lounge, 2 junior marketing assistants leaned close over their salads. "I've been here 2 years with a master's in international business," one muttered. "And she was scrubbing restrooms last week." Her friend shrugged. "Maybe she knows something we don't." Please the first scoffed. This is just Granger trying to look progressive. A PR stunt. But what they didn't know, what most didn't know, was that Marian wasn't interested in optics. She was interested in doing the job and doing it well. Still, she could feel the weight of every sideways glance as she walked the halls. She wasn't naive. She knew some people thought she hadn't earned her place. And that first afternoon in her new office, as she sat behind a desk she never imagined herself occupying, she asked HR quietly if she could keep her janitor's uniform. Not to wear, she clarified, just to remember. Later that day, her first real test arrived. Victor de Leon, the company's longtime head of international operations, walked in unannounced with a clipboard and an arched brow. So he said, voice tight, "You're the new liaison." "That's what I've been told," Marian replied calmly. "You have experience in corporate environments." She smiled faintly, only from the outside looking in. He didn't laugh. "I've got vendor reports from Italy, contract issues with Dubai, and a translation mess with Sao Paulo. Think you can manage that?" Marian stood up. "It'll need a few hours to review. But yes, I can handle it." Victor dropped the folder on her desk without another word and walked out. Marian exhaled slowly. Welcome to the big leagues. That evening, Thomas Granger stopped by her office. "How's day one?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "I've had worse," she replied, leaning back in her chair. "Victor giving you trouble." "He doesn't scare me." He grinned. "Didn't think he would." Then after a pause, Marian asked softly, "Why now? Why me? You could have just handed me a bonus and kept walking." Thomas looked at her with quiet intensity. "Because I saw myself in you." She tilted her head. "You were a janitor." "No. But I was overlooked a lot. Grew up in a small town. Dad fixed cars, Mom cleaned houses. Worked 3 jobs through college. People didn't think I belonged in rooms like this either." Marian nodded slowly. "Now you're the one deciding who gets in." "Exactly." A silence settled between them. Not awkward, but grounded. Real. "You'll be honest," she said. "I'm nervous." "Good. That means you care." She looked away for a moment. "There are folks who hate this." "They'll get over it," he said. "Or they won't. Either way, we're moving forward." And with that, Thomas left her to it. But the message was clear. Marian hadn't been given a seat at the table. She had earned it. And whether the building liked it or not, she wasn't going anywhere. By the following week, something unexpected began to take root on the 12th floor, and it had Marian Walker's fingerprints all over it. People started coming to her. At first it was for quick translations. Someone from the Frankfurt office needed clarification on an email thread, or a vendor in Dubai was confused by a shipment clause. Marian handled it all with quiet confidence, bridging cultures in real time. But it didn't stop there. Soon, interns were knocking on her door. One young man from the IT department stuttered through a question about career paths. A shy Vietnamese intern named Bao sat across from her one afternoon and asked, "How did you learn 9 languages?" Marian smiled gently. "One word at a time, same way you will." She never spoke down to anyone, never flaunted her knowledge, but she shared what she knew freely. Tips, encouragement, guidance. Her presence, once overlooked, had become a kind of quiet lighthouse in a building that often felt cold to those without titles. One afternoon, Thomas Granger joined her for coffee in the break room. She wore a beige cardigan and her usual sneakers. He wore his suit, but without the tie. "Been hearing good things," he said. She sipped her coffee. "Been trying to ignore the bad ones." "You're making waves." She looked at him sideways. "That a good thing?" He smiled. "Around here it means you're doing something right." They stood in silence for a moment before he added, "I've been thinking about starting a new training initiative, something for employees in non-desk roles. There's probably more Marians in this building and we just haven't seen them yet." She nodded. "There are, trust me. Would you help me build it?" She didn't hesitate. "Already started in my head." By the end of the month, Voice Inside launched an internal development program designed to uncover untapped talent within the company. Language classes, mentorship tracks, visibility sessions. It was Marian's idea, and it caught fire. And then an invitation came. Marian was asked to speak at a leadership summit in Cincinnati, room full of seasoned professionals, many of whom had never heard her name. She stood at the podium in a tailored navy dress, hands steady on the microphone. "I was never just a janitor," she said. "I was fluent. I was capable. I was ready." But nobody ever looked long enough to see it. Silence fell over the room. "So the next time you pass someone without a title," she continued, "ask yourself, what are you really missing?" And then came the applause, not polite clapping, a standing ovation. On her way out, a young man approached her, eyes glassy with emotion. "My mom's a housekeeper," he said, "and she speaks 5 languages." I used to be embarrassed to say that. Marion gently touched his arm. "Don't ever be ashamed of where you come from. The only thing to be ashamed of is staying blind to brilliance." She walked out taller than ever. Not because of the applause, not because of the spotlight, but because she hadn't had to change who she was to stand in that room. She brought her full story with her, and now she carried others' stories too. But as the light grew brighter, so did the shadows. Somewhere back in that polished building in Fort Worth, not everyone was celebrating Marion's rise, and someone was already preparing to push back. Late Thursday afternoon, the pushback finally came. Marion Walker was summoned to the 17th floor for a closed-door meeting with Eleanor Craig, a senior board member known for her sharp suits and even sharper words. Eleanor didn't waste time. She questioned Marion's lack of formal credentials, her sudden promotion, and whether this experiment was sustainable. But Marion sat tall, calm, and answered each pointed inquiry with the same quiet truth that had brought her this far. "I may not have a degree on my wall," she said evenly, "but I've already fixed vendor issues, unlocked, stalled partnerships, and given your team tools they never had. I don't need to be liked. I need to be useful. And I am." That night, Marion sat across the street from the Belridge Tower, watching its windows glow against the dark sky. She called her daughter just to hear her voice, and when she walked back inside, she did so with her shoulders squared, ready to keep going. The next morning, someone had written 3 simple words on the whiteboard outside her office. "We see you." Never underestimate someone based on their job title, uniform, or background. True talent can't be measured by resumes or degrees alone. It's revealed in character commitment and quiet excellence. Have you ever been overlooked or underestimated and proved them wrong? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story moved, you don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more powerful real-life tales that remind us greatness can come from the most unexpected places.